A little girl went missing from her kindergarten classroom without a trace. No signs of struggle, no leads. Just gone. For 9 years, her mother searched everywhere, holding on to fading hope. Then one ordinary afternoon, while flipping through her son's school yearbook, she saw a face, a familiar face. Her heart stopped. It looked exactly like her missing daughter, only older, dressed in a school uniform, smiling. Alive, now the real story begins. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. The sun had barely risen over the quiet town of Willow Creek when 5-year-old Amber Hill disappeared. It was supposed to be a normal Monday. Her mother, Jenna Hill, kissed her goodbye at the school gate like she always did. Amber, a bright girl with honey blonde curls and a gap-toothed smile, ran toward her classroom in her tiny sneakers, waving back one last time before the doors closed behind her. But by noon, Jenna's phone rang. It was the school. "Mrs. Hill, is Amber with you?" the secretary asked nervously. Jenna's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "She's in class." There was a pause. "No, she's not. We can't find her." That was the beginning of the nightmare. The police arrived within minutes. The school was put on lockdown. Classrooms were checked, restrooms searched, even the janitor's closet. Every adult on campus was questioned. Every child accounted for, except Amber. There was no surveillance footage of her leaving the building. No signs of a break-in, no screams, no struggle. She had simply vanished. FBI got involved by the end of the week. They combed through Jenna's life, her ex-husband's background, neighbors, even strangers who had liked Amber's pictures on social media. Every camera within 5 miles of the school was reviewed. Nothing. Not even a glimpse of Amber's pink backpack. Jenna became a shadow of herself. She stopped eating. She stopped answering calls. She barely left the house unless it was to meet with detectives, follow up on dead-end tips, or check another possible sighting of a blonde child across the country. She wallpapered her kitchen with maps, pins, and timelines. The reward for Amber's return reached $100,000. Nothing helped. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. Her ex-husband, Todd, tried to move on. He got remarried, had another daughter, but Jenna refused to stop. "She's still out there," she'd whisper to herself late at night, staring at Amber's photo. "I can feel it." 9 years passed. Jenna still lived in the same house, still worked part-time as a waitress, still drove the same old Subaru, hoping one day it would carry her to her daughter. Her son, Luke, who was only a baby when Amber vanished, had just entered 5th grade. It was Luke's first year at Franklin Elementary, the school in the neighboring district. One chilly November afternoon, Jenna came home after a long shift at the diner. Luke was on the couch, flipping through his new yearbook. "Want to see something funny, Mom?" he asked, grinning. "There's a girl in 8th grade who kinda looks like Amber." Jenna didn't laugh. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud like that in years. Not by Luke. She took the yearbook from him with trembling fingers and flipped to the 8th grade section. Row by row, she scanned the pictures. Most of the kids looked like strangers, some wore braces, others wore goofy smiles or dramatic makeup. Then her eyes froze. 4th row, second from the left. A girl with light blue eyes, blonde curls, and a tiny scar above her right eyebrow. Amber had gotten that scar when she fell off the swing set at age 3. Jenna's breath caught. It looked like Amber. Older, but still Amber. She stared at the name under the photo. Haley James. Her fingers ran across the page. The resemblance was undeniable. Her heart pounded as memories flooded back, birthday parties, bedtime songs, that exact same smile. She ran to her bedroom and opened the drawer she hadn't touched in years. Inside was Amber's old kindergarten photo. She held it next to the yearbook. Same eyes, same jawline, same scar. Her hands began to shake. She dialed the local police, barely able to speak. "I think I found my daughter." Detectives responded quickly but cautiously. Sergeant Diego Nolan, a sharp ex-military type with a heavy voice, was assigned the case. "Ma'am, we'll handle this delicately, but we need to be sure." They began looking into Haley James, school records, guardianship paperwork, medical history. Something was off. Haley's birth certificate had been issued 5 years ago, not 13. No hospital listed. No immunization history before the age of 4. And her parents, Megan and Travis James, had no prior photos of her as a baby. Nolan leaned back in his chair after the interview. These people either adopted her late, or they're lying. The next day, school dismissed early. A white unmarked SUV parked near the school gate. Jenna and Nolan waited inside. They watched as Haley exited the building, chatting with another girl. Jenna's fingers gripped the door handle so tight her knuckles turned white. "That's her," she whispered. "That's my daughter." Nolan looked through his binoculars, then back at the files. "I believe you," he said, but something else caught his eye. 2 men across the street, standing by a black sedan. Dark clothes, sunglasses. One of them had an earpiece. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "I need you to stay here. Don't move." He opened the glove box, pulled out his concealed Glock, and stepped out of the car. Everything started happening fast. As Haley began walking toward the sidewalk, the men across the street started moving. One of them reached into his coat. Nolan shouted, "Federal agent." "Hands where I can see them!" Gunfire erupted. Screams rang out, kids ducked. Teachers pulled students behind cars. Nolan fired twice, dropping one of the men. The other returned fire and ran. Jenna ducked inside the car, screaming Amber's name. But the girl, the one who looked just like her daughter, had vanished again in the chaos. Screams echoed across the schoolyard. Sirens wailed in the distance. The smell of burnt gunpowder hung in the air. Jenna's hands trembled as she climbed out of the SUV. Her heart thudded in her chest as she scanned the crowd, searching for the girl with the blonde curls. "She was right there," Jenna whispered, her voice cracking. Sergeant Nolan barked orders at a uniformed officer nearby. "Secure the perimeter. No one in or out until we ID that second suspect." Jenna broke through the line of officers, desperate. "Where is she? Where's my daughter?" "She ran during the gunfire," Nolan said, panting slightly, his gun still drawn. "We're checking every corner of this campus. I swear we'll find her." Inside the school, hallways buzzed with panic. Teachers locked classroom doors. Kids hid under desks. But Haley James had disappeared again like smoke. Nolan's radio crackled. "We've got a trail." The south fence was bent. "Looks like someone climbed over." Nolan turned to Jenna. She may have panicked and ran. Or someone grabbed her again. Jenna's knees buckled, but she caught herself on the door of the SUV. "No, not again, please." 10 minutes later, K-9 units arrived. Officers followed fresh footprints in the mud along the school's south edge, past the track field, through a gap in the fence, and into the woods behind the campus. Jenna insisted on going with them. "You'll have to cuff me if you want me to stay behind." Nolan reluctantly nodded. "Fine. But stay close, and stay low." The group of 5 officers moved swiftly through the woods, guns raised, eyes scanning. The trail ended near a creek, where tire marks were found in the soft earth. "Looks like she was taken," one officer muttered. Nolan cursed under his breath. Backup vehicle was waiting. This wasn't random. Jenna stared at the tire prints, her eyes wide. They were ready for us. 3 hours later, back at the station, Jenna sat in a small office staring at the whiteboard covered in photos, maps, and timelines. Her hands clenched into fists as Nolan paced. This wasn't just a case of a kidnapped girl raised by strangers. This was coordinated, he said. Those men weren't just random creeps. They were trained. Jenna's voice shook. Why would someone go to that much trouble? Why take her and raise her under a different name? Why wait 9 years, and then risk everything to take her again? Nolan sat down across from her. That's what we're going to find out. He handed her a folder. Inside were papers on Megan and Travis James, the couple who had been raising Haley. They had vanished, phones off, credit cards frozen. Their house was empty by the time police arrived. It looked like they hadn't lived there long, just a few clothes in the closet, some canned food, no photos on the walls. Whoever they are, Nolan said, they were never meant to stay. This was temporary. A holding place. Jenna stared at their photo, Travis with a hard face, Megan with icy eyes. Do you think they were paid? Maybe. Or threatened. Either way, they were prepared to vanish. Nolan reached into another file. One more thing. We ID'd the guy I shot at the school. He slid a picture across the table. The man was clean-shaven, early 40s, wearing a black suit. Name's Roy Becker, former military. Dishonorably discharged. Worked in private security for a company that no longer exists. Jenna looked up. What does that mean? It means whoever's behind this has money, resources, and possibly something to hide. The next day, Nolan and his team got a break. One of the officers had pulled a blurry camera feed from a convenience store near the edge of town. It showed a black van speeding through a red light minutes after the school shooting. No plates, but it was something. Nolan ordered a grid search across the nearby highways. Roadblocks went up. Local media caught wind of the school shooting and started asking questions. Jenna, however, wasn't interested in the news. She went home for the first time in 2 days, sat in her daughter's untouched bedroom, and broke down. The posters were still on the wall. A unicorn backpack hung on the door. Amber's favorite stuffed bunny sat on her old bed, faded, one eye missing. I was so close, she whispered, holding the bunny tight. I had you. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She picked up. Hello. There was silence at first. Then a female voice, quiet, trembling. I saw her. Jenna sat up. Who is this? I used to babysit for Megan and Travis James, the voice continued. Before they moved, they told me her name was Haley, but I knew something was off. Jenna's heart leapt. Where are you? What did you see? The girl hesitated. She wasn't allowed to talk about her past. Ever. But one night she had a nightmare. She screamed the name Mommy Jenna. That's when I knew something was wrong. I recognized her face when I saw the news today. Jenna's voice was urgent. Where did they go? Do you know? They talked about going back to the compound. That's all I heard. It sounded like a safe house. Military types came by sometimes. Armed. They called Travis Commander. That's all I know. The line went dead. Jenna sat there frozen. Compound? Commander? This wasn't just a kidnapping anymore. It was starting to feel like a deeper operation, one that stretched far beyond a missing child case. By the weekend, Nolan's team tracked down a possible lead. A warehouse outside town had been leased under Travis James's name 6 months ago. It hadn't been used for shipping or storage. No listed employees, no cameras nearby. They decided to move in. Nolan prepped a tactical team and included Jenna against protocol, but he knew her eyes better than any facial scanner. Only if you stay behind cover, he warned. You don't engage. Got it, she nodded. Just show me her face. At 2:14 a.m. they rolled out. The warehouse was quiet. One light flickered near the entrance. The air was thick with tension. Nolan's men moved in first, silent and sharp. Inside, the place looked abandoned. Empty crates, dusty equipment, a few empty cans of food. Sleeping bags, then movement. A man darted across the far corner. Freeze! One of the officers shouted. Gunshots rang out. Nolan ducked behind a steel beam, returning fire. Jenna crouched near the SUV outside, her heart in her throat. Through the open doors, she saw a blur of blonde hair. A girl running toward the back exit. Amber! Jenna screamed, bolting forward before anyone could stop her. But by the time she reached the doorway, the girl was gone again, swallowed by the darkness. Again. Jenna stood frozen in the doorway of the warehouse. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as she stared into the darkness, trying to convince herself she hadn't imagined the blonde figure sprinting through the back. That was her. That was Amber. Get her, she shouted, turning back toward the team. She went out the back. Nolan and 2 officers dashed past her, flashlights cutting through the night as their boots pounded the dirt. They followed the trail behind the building, where a narrow gravel path led into a thicket of trees. The rest of the team stayed behind to secure the warehouse. Jenna ran behind them, her heart racing, lungs burning. Every branch she pushed past felt like another second stolen from her. Amber! She cried out. But the only answer was wind. Stop here, Nolan called to his team, holding up his hand. Listen! They paused, straining to hear anything. Leaves rustled. An owl hooted in the distance. Then faint footsteps. Northwest, one of the officers whispered. Running. Fast. Nolan signaled, and they moved again, quicker now, slicing through bushes and brush. Flashlights caught glimpses of flattened grass, broken twigs, shoe prints. She was close. 100 feet ahead, a shadow darted across a clearing. Don't move, Nolan yelled. Hands up. The girl stumbled, turned, and stopped. Her face was pale in the flashlight's beam. Jenna pushed forward, breathless. Amber? The girl's eyes locked on hers, wide. Confused, scared. "Mom," she whispered. Then gunshots, not from the team, but from the trees. "Get down!" Nolan yelled, grabbing Jenna and throwing her behind a large stump. Bullets ripped through the clearing. One officer returned fire while another pulled the girl down into the grass. "Move! Fall back to the tree line," Nolan ordered. They crawled backward through the undergrowth as bullets struck the trees around them. Whoever was shooting wasn't trying to scare them. They were trying to kill. "Covering fire," Nolan shouted. He stood up, aimed into the darkness, and fired several shots. The gunfire stopped, then silence. The woods seemed to hold their breath. "Everyone okay?" he called out. One officer groaned, clutching his shoulder. "Hit, but I'll live." The girl trembled beside Jenna, too stunned to speak. Jenna held her face in her hands gently. "It's you. It's really you." Amber nodded slowly, eyes filled with tears. "They told me you were dead." Jenna couldn't breathe. She hugged her daughter tightly as Nolan kept his gun aimed into the woods. "We're not safe here," he said. "Let's move now." Back at the safe house, a small ranch-style home owned by the police department for witness protection, Amber sat on the edge of a cot, wrapped in a blanket, sipping hot chocolate. She looked like a teenager now. Long hair, lean arms, but still those same bright blue eyes. Jenna never left her side. Nolan stepped into the room and closed the door gently behind him. "We need to talk," Jenna nodded. He pulled out a recorder. "Amber, I'm sorry to ask this right now, but we need to know what happened. Where they took you, what they said." Amber looked down. "I don't remember everything." "That's okay," Nolan said calmly. "Just start with what you do remember." Amber took a shaky breath. "I was in kindergarten. I remember going to school that day. My teacher asked me to go to the nurse's office. But when I got there, a man was waiting. He smiled and said, 'Your mom asked me to pick you up.' I didn't think twice." Jenna wiped her eyes. "He put me in a van," Amber continued, "and we drove a long time. When I asked about you, he said you died in a car accident. He told me I was going to live with new parents. He said I had to forget everything before, or the people who hurt you would come after me too." "Did they ever hurt you?" Nolan asked. "No," she whispered, "not physically. But they didn't love me. It was like I was just something to watch over." Jenna spoke softly. "Who were they?" Amber hesitated. "I don't know. They called themselves the Network. They never explained it, just rules." "Always rules." Nolan raised an eyebrow. "What kind of rules?" "No photos. No phones. No friends who ask too many questions. And if I ever mentioned you, I'd get locked in the quiet room." Jenna's fists clenched. "Did they train you for anything?" Nolan asked carefully. "Teach you things?" Amber nodded slowly. "A man named Travis made me memorize maps. Numbers, codes. I had to read news every day. He'd quiz me. Sometimes I had to listen to people through hidden microphones and report back what they said." Nolan's jaw tightened. They were using her. He looked at Jenna. "Your daughter's not just a missing child. She's been part of something much bigger." Jenna pulled Amber into her arms. "They're never taking you again." But Nolan knew it wouldn't be that simple. Later that night, a black SUV pulled into a quiet lot downtown. Two men inside sat in silence. One of them wore a headset and stared at a tablet. "We've lost her." The other, older with cold eyes and a scar across his neck, lit a cigarette. "She's not supposed to remember anything." "She does." The man blew out smoke. "Then we need to clean this up, fast." He reached into the glove box and pulled out a photo of Amber with a red X across it. "Give the order," he said. Back at the safe house, Nolan's phone rang. It was dispatch. "Sir, we just intercepted a call. Untraceable. But they mentioned something you need to hear." "What is it?" The dispatcher hesitated. "They're sending a team tonight to the safe house," they said. "Finish the job." Nolan froze. Then he grabbed his rifle. "We've got to move, now." Jenna looked up in confusion. "He didn't wait. We've been found." Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Jenna sat up straight in bed. "What did you say?" she asked, already wide awake. Amber stood in the doorway, barefoot, hugging herself tightly. There was a red dot on the trees. "I saw it move. I think it was from one of their guns. Like before." Jenna was out of bed in seconds, grabbing her phone and rushing into the hallway. She called out, "Nolan!" His door creaked open down the hall. He was already dressed, alert, and holding his sidearm. "I heard her. What did she see?" Amber pointed toward the window. It was quick, just a small red light moving across the trees. Nolan's face tensed. He pulled out his radio. "Eyes up. We may have heat. East side. Infrared sight possibly active. Alert all units." Within minutes, 2 officers were sweeping the outside perimeter. Another stood watch from the roof with a night scope. Inside, the lights were turned off, curtains drawn tighter. Everyone moved quietly, alert. It felt like a war zone. Jenna held Amber close on the couch. Her daughter's breathing was shaky. "Are we safe here?" she whispered. Nolan crouched by the window, watching through a gap. "Not anymore." An officer's voice crackled over the radio. "Vehicle approaching. Headlights off. Slow crawl." Nolan moved quickly. "Jenna, take Amber to the back room. Lock the door. Don't open it unless it's me." She didn't argue. Inside the back room, Jenna locked the door, then grabbed the emergency phone Nolan had left with her earlier. It was set to call him directly. Amber sat on the floor, knees tucked to her chest. "Is this my fault?" she whispered. Jenna knelt in front of her. "None of this is your fault. The only wrong thing would have been not getting you back." Then they heard it shuffling outside. Then footsteps on the porch. Nolan and 2 officers crouched behind the front wall. Guns up, breath silent, one more step outside. Then a soft knock 3 times. Nolan didn't answer. The knock came again. Then a voice, muffled but sharp. "We don't want trouble. Send the girl out and we walk away." Nolan responded calmly. "You're outnumbered. Walk away now and you won't get hurt." Silence and a thud, someone trying to break the front door down. Shots rang out immediately. Nolan fired twice. 1 officer kicked the door from the inside to block entry. Another round of bullets smashed the window. Glass rained down across the hallway. "Back!" Nolan shouted. "Fall to defensive positions." Outside, 3 masked men returned fire. One moved along the fence toward the back of the house. Inside the safe room, Jenna heard the gunshots and covered Amber's ears. "It's okay," she whispered. "He won't let anything happen." Amber, shaking, nodded. Suddenly, the doorknob rattled. Then silence. Jenna reached for the handgun Nolan had stashed in the nightstand earlier. She didn't want to use it, but she wouldn't hesitate either. Then, "Jenna, it's me," Nolan's voice. She opened the door an inch, peering through. It was really him. He closed the door behind him and whispered quickly, "They've got one down. 2 left, one's heading around back. I need you to stay here." "Take her," Jenna said, pushing Amber forward. "Get her out." Nolan shook his head. "They're too close. We hold for now." Suddenly a loud crash came from the back window. "Down!" Nolan shouted, shielding Amber with his body as another man burst through the glass, rolling in with a weapon raised. But Jenna was faster. She aimed and pulled the trigger. The shot rang out. The man dropped instantly, groaning in pain, clutching his shoulder. Nolan grabbed the weapon, kicked it away. "Nice shot." Jenna's hands trembled. "First time I ever shot anything." "You're a natural." They heard tires screeching outside. Nolan checked his radio. "Team's pushing them back. They're retreating." Jenna grabbed Amber's hand tightly. "We have to go. We can't stay here another minute." Nolan nodded. "I agree. Pack light. We leave in 5." An hour later, Jenna, Amber, and Nolan were in a black SUV speeding down a highway, escorted by 2 unmarked patrol vehicles. They didn't speak much. Everyone was on edge. Amber sat in the back seat, quiet, staring out the window at the night. "Where are we going now?" Jenna asked. Nolan didn't look away from the road. "Safe house in the city. High-rise building. Private floor. Much harder to ambush." Jenna nodded. "They won't stop." "No," Nolan said flatly. "They won't." Jenna leaned her head back, thoughts spinning. Someone had raised her daughter to be invisible, to obey, to forget, but she hadn't forgotten. She still remembered Jenna, still remembered home. Who were these people? And why go through all this? Nolan's phone buzzed again. He tapped his earpiece. "Yeah." The voice on the other end spoke fast. "We ran further checks on the fold. It's not official, but it's connected to a black market security ring. Private. Off the books, sometimes ex-military. Sometimes criminal, no online presence. Real shadow group stuff." Nolan's knuckles tightened on the wheel. What do they do? Kidnapping, espionage. Child recruits. There's whispers that they build identities, raise kids under fake lives, train them to spy, steal, disappear. Jenna turned to him, eyes wide. They were making her into one of them? Nolan nodded once. It looks that way. Amber's voice was quiet but clear. They said I'd be useful one day. They said I had to be prepared. Jenna's stomach turned. They made me watch people. Listen. Write reports. Learn languages, Amber continued. They said they were saving me, but I never believed them. Jenna reached back, holding her daughter's hand tightly. You're not theirs. You're mine. The new safe house was a luxury apartment on the 30th floor of a private building downtown. Security at every entrance. Armed guards in the hallway. One way in, one way out. Amber was given a secure room to rest. Jenna stood in the hallway with Nolan. She's still in danger, isn't she? She asked. Nolan nodded. They won't stop until she's either back with them or silenced. Jenna looked at him directly. Then we don't run anymore. Nolan raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? We fight back. In another city, a sleek modern office buzzed with activity. A woman in a gray suit sat at a long table, flipping through a file with Amber's photo on the cover. A man stood across from her. We lost her. The woman didn't flinch. Then find her again. She's protected, guarded. The woman snapped the file shut. Then tear it all down. The next morning, the sun barely peeked through the thick clouds as the city came alive below the 30th floor of the new safe house. But inside the luxury apartment, there was no peace. Amber stood silently at the window, watching people walk the streets like nothing was wrong, like her life wasn't a ticking bomb waiting to explode. Behind her, Jenna and Nolan sat at a small kitchen table, surrounded by half-finished breakfast and paperwork. They hadn't slept much. She's scared, but she's tough, Nolan said quietly, glancing at Amber. Jenna nodded. She doesn't even realize how strong she is. Nolan pulled out a tablet and slid it across to Jenna. I've been digging. There's one lead. Not much, but it's something. The screen showed a photo of a man, late 50s, white hair, suit, emotionless stare. Who's he? Jenna asked. Name's Malcolm Varelli. Ex-military intelligence, went private. One of the original members tied to the fold before it went underground. We believe he manages the Western Cell. And he knows about Amber. If he doesn't yet, he will soon. Jenna's face tightened. Then we stop him before he comes looking. Nolan raised an eyebrow. I'm not sitting on the sidelines anymore. I took my daughter, twice. He didn't argue. Later that day, Nolan met with a trusted contact, a retired CIA analyst named Linda Ames, living quietly under a different name. They met at a park bench in a quiet part of town. She looked older than Nolan remembered, but her eyes were sharp. You said this was urgent, she said, sipping coffee. It's about a girl, Nolan replied. Taken as a child, raised in a hidden program. We think it's the fold. Linda didn't speak right away. Then she said they never stopped recruiting. They just stopped leaving evidence. I need to find out where they're hiding now. I need to find Varelli. Linda took out a small flash drive and handed it to him. What's this? Nolan asked. A whisper file? Old intercepts, private travel logs, bank movements, unofficial meeting locations. I kept copies when I left the agency, just in case. He looked at her, surprised. Why? Because I always knew they'd come back. That night, Nolan returned to the safe house and plugged in the drive. Amber sat beside him, curious. Jenna watched from the kitchen, arms folded. Here, Nolan said, pointing at the screen. 3 weeks ago, Varelli flew to a private airfield outside Marfa, Texas. He traveled with 2 men under fake passports and met with someone named Director H. Who's that? Jenna asked. Nolan shook his head. No idea, but it sounds like someone important. Amber leaned in. That's where they trained me. Both Jenna and Nolan turned to her. What? Amber pointed at the map. That area in Texas. It's remote. They had a ranch there. But it was more than that. It had tunnels. Hidden rooms. I didn't know where it was before. But that's it. Nolan locked eyes with Jenna. We might have just found their base. The next morning, the plan was in motion. Nolan secured a black SUV under false tags and loaded it with weapons, surveillance gear, and backup phones. Jenna packed a small bag for Amber with clothes and essential items. She added a folded photo of them from years ago, one of the last they'd taken before Amber vanished. Amber hugged it to her chest. What if they see us coming? They won't, Nolan said. Not this time. They left the city at dawn. For hours they drove in silence. Amber sat in the back, earbuds in, staring out the window. Jenna watched the GPS, glancing behind every so often to check for a tail. As they neared Marfa, the landscape changed. Flat desert. Long stretches of nothing. Fences miles apart. Nolan pulled off onto a dirt road and killed the engine. This is where we go on foot, he said. They stashed the car behind a dry hill and moved through the brush, each carrying a bag. Jenna's hands were sweating, but her grip on the pistol was steady. It was late afternoon when they spotted it. A long fenced-in property sat quietly on the horizon. No visible guards. Just a few buildings spread across acres. It looked abandoned, but that was the point. This is it, Amber said, voice low. I remember that building. I learned to fire a weapon in there. Jenna's stomach twisted. Nolan pulled out binoculars. No heat signals, no movement. But let's assume they're watching. They waited until nightfall before approaching. Nolan led them through a break in the fence. They slipped through shadows, past empty stables, a rusted water tank, and finally reached one of the larger buildings. The door was unlocked. Inside was dusty and quiet. Training mats still lined the floor. A whiteboard sat at the front of the room with faded writing. Observe. Adapt. Control. Amber stared at it. They used to chant that, like a rule. Jenna took a photo. They moved into the hallway. Doors opened to classrooms, weapon lockers, even a medical bay. It felt like a military school. Or worse. Suddenly Amber pointed. That's the elevator. It goes underground. They followed her. The elevator was still functional. Nolan pressed the button. It groaned, then slowly descended. Jenna's pulse pounded. When the doors opened, it was darker. Cooler. Fluorescent lights flickered above as they stepped into a long concrete corridor. A red siren light blinked at the end. Silent alarm, Nolan whispered. I know we're here. Suddenly, a metal door slammed shut behind them, trapped. Jenna raised her weapon. What now? Footsteps echoed. A voice came over an unseen speaker. Calm, sharp. Impressive, Agent Nolan. You found us. Varelli, Nolan muttered. Amber stepped forward. Let us go. The voice laughed. Go where? The world outside never cared. Not until now. Nolan aimed upward at a black dome in the ceiling, likely a speaker and camera combo, and fired. The lights flickered out. Then came the sound of boots running. They're coming, Nolan said. We hold or we fight. Jenna stepped beside him. We fight. Amber raised her head. I remember the layout. I know another way out, Nolan nodded. Then lead us. And just like that, they were on the move again. Running. Dodging shadows. With nothing but their grit, their training, and a mother's resolve to get her daughter out alive. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. The underground hallway was cold and narrow. The only light came from a blinking red bulb on the far wall, throwing strange shadows as Jenna, Nolan, and Amber ran. Amber led the way, taking sharp turns down side passages, never hesitating. Where are you taking us? Nolan asked, breathless but focused. There's a service tunnel, Amber said. It's how they moved us around without being seen. It leads out behind the ridge. Behind them, the sound of boots echoed, quick, heavy, and getting closer. Faster, Jenna urged, grabbing Amber's hand. As they turned another corner, 2 guards appeared up ahead, raising their weapons. Nolan didn't hesitate. He raised his gun and fired. The first guard dropped instantly. The second ducked and returned fire, bullets slamming into the walls. Jenna and Amber dropped to the ground while Nolan slid forward, firing again. Clean shot to the shoulder. The guard screamed and went down. Clear, Nolan shouted. They kept moving. The hallway started to slope downward, and the air smelled like damp earth and metal. Left up here, Amber said. They followed her into a side tunnel. This one was tighter, older. Pipes ran along the ceiling, some dripping. The concrete was cracked and worn. Suddenly, a loud thump came from above them, like a trapdoor being opened. Jenna looked up. They're dropping down behind us. We can't stop, Nolan said. Keep moving. They reached a thick steel door at the end. Amber punched in a code on the old keypad. It blinked red. Wrong code, she muttered. She tried again. Still red. Nolan stepped in, reached into his bag, and pulled out a small explosive charge. Stand back. He placed the charge carefully along the door hinge, then hit the trigger. The explosion shook the tunnel, but didn't collapse it. The door swung open with a groan. Go, he shouted. They burst through the door and into a large drainage channel. The walls were high, the air fresher. Faint light shone from a grating above. We're close, Amber said. That grate leads to the surface. Just past that is a fence. They climbed fast. Nolan went first, pushing the grate open and climbing onto the dirt road above. He reached down and helped Jenna and Amber up. Behind them, more footsteps echoed through the tunnel. Nolan looked up and spotted the SUV they had stashed behind the hill earlier. There! The three of them ran across the rocky ground. Jenna's lungs burned, but she didn't slow down. Amber jumped into the back seat while Nolan started the engine. Jenna slid into the passenger seat just as bullets cracked past them. A black Jeep with its lights off came charging down the hill. They're trying to ram us, Jenna yelled. Nolan slammed the SUV into gear, turned hard, and took off across the open desert. Dust flew everywhere, headlights were off. It was chase or be caught. The Jeep followed fast, bumping over rocks, closing the gap. Amber turned in her seat and looked out the back. They're gaining! Jenna reached into the glove box and pulled out a pistol Nolan had stashed. She opened the window, took a deep breath, and aimed back. A shot cracked, the Jeep swerved. Another shot, this time it hit the front grille. Sparks flew, but the Jeep didn't stop. Suddenly the road split. Nolan turned hard onto a narrow path between two rock formations. The Jeep followed. Then, ahead, another vehicle. Oh no, Nolan muttered. A second black Jeep blocked the path ahead. Headlights off, engine running. We're boxed in, Jenna shouted. Nolan skidded to a stop and threw it in reverse. But the first Jeep had already caught up. They were trapped. Get down, he yelled. Bullets started flying from both Jeeps. Jenna and Amber ducked low, covered by the seats. Nolan returned fire through the windshield, aiming high. The SUV rocked as shots hit the frame. Glass shattered. The mirror exploded. Smoke bomb, Nolan shouted, grabbing a canister from his bag. He cracked the pin and threw it out the window. Thick white smoke exploded outward, covering them like fog. He turned to Jenna and Amber. When I say go, run left toward the rocks. There's a ravine we can slide down. Jenna grabbed Amber's hand, nodding. Go! They burst from the car, running through the smoke. Bullets zipped past, but missed. Nolan followed close, firing blindly to hold them back. They reached the edge of the ravine, about 15 feet down, steep but survivable. Slide! Nolan shouted. Jenna went first, pulling Amber with her. Dirt and rocks kicked up as they slid. They hit the bottom, bruised but alive. Nolan jumped down after them, landed hard, but didn't stop moving. They ran through the dried creek bed, ducking behind rocks, disappearing into the darkness. Above them, the shooters reached the edge, shining lights down, but didn't follow. They knew they'd lost them, for now. 2 hours later, far from the scene, they reached a gas station off the highway. Nolan pulled into the back, where a contact was waiting in an old, dented pickup. The man tossed him a set of keys. Your new ride. Unmarked, plates are clean. Thanks, Nolan said. We owe you. The man nodded. You're not the first to run from those people. As they drove off again, Jenna finally let herself breathe. Amber leaned her head on her shoulder in the back seat. I didn't think we'd make it, she whispered. Jenna kissed her forehead. You did great. Nolan drove in silence, then finally said, We hurt them tonight. We shook their nest. They're going to regroup. They won't let this go, Jenna nodded. Neither will we. They drove on, headed to a new safe zone, one deeper in the system, under federal protection. But they all knew it was only temporary. Amber was the key to something they still didn't fully understand. Something bigger, something darker. And they had just scratched the surface. 3 days had passed since the ambush in the desert. Jenna, Nolan, and Amber were now holed up inside a federal protection unit hidden inside a small law enforcement training facility in Colorado. To outsiders, it looked like a quiet police academy surrounded by trees. But underground, behind thick doors and reinforced walls, it was something else entirely. A safe house built for threats the public never heard about. Amber sat on a cot in one of the small rooms, knees pulled to her chest. She hadn't spoken much since they escaped. Her eyes were tired, like someone twice her age. Jenna watched her from the doorway, arms folded. She felt helpless. Her little girl, who used to love pink glitter shoes and bedtime stories, now flinched at sudden noises and could name types of guns from memory. Nolan walked up behind her. "She's processing. Give her time." "I don't want time," Jenna said. "I want answers." Nolan handed her a file folder. "We may have some." She opened it and saw several photos inside, people in suits, blueprints, and a surveillance image of a sleek high-rise building. "This is their base of operations." Jenna asked. "We believe so, Denver. Registered as a data analytics firm. But we traced several former operatives from the fold walking in and out." Jenna stared at a photo of Malcolm Varelli exiting a black car in front of the building. "He's there, almost every day." Jenna's voice lowered. "Then that's where we end it." That night, a new plan was drawn up. Nolan, with the help of a federal tech team, studied the building's layout. It was 13 stories high with 2 levels of basement access. Varelli operated from the 10th floor. Security was tight, no visible guards, but coded elevators and biometric entry points. "We don't go in loud," Nolan said. "We go in smart." "How?" Jenna asked. "We find someone on the inside and use them." The next afternoon, Nolan and Jenna followed one of the data firm's employees, an IT tech named Marcus, home from work. He was in his mid-30s, lived alone, no criminal history. They waited until he stepped into his driveway. Nolan approached first, hands raised. "Don't panic. We're not here to hurt you." Marcus froze, keys in hand. I don't know anything. Maybe not," Nolan said. "But you have access to a building that's hiding people who hurt children." Marcus blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" Jenna stepped forward. "My daughter was taken when she was 5. Raised to be part of something she never chose. The man behind it walks through your office every day." Marcus lowered his keys. "You mean Mr. Varelli?" Jenna nodded. "That's him," Marcus swallowed. "He's not like the others. People avoid him. Doors close when he walks past." "You want to help?" Nolan asked. "Get us access." The next morning, Marcus walked into the data firm like it was any other day, but this time a thin wire was taped behind his ear. Nolan and Jenna waited in a van 3 blocks away. Amber was with a trusted federal officer in another safe location. She didn't argue this time. She knew what was at stake. "Marcus, you're doing great," Nolan said through the comms. "Take the freight elevator, swipe your badge. Then we'll walk you through the rest." Inside, Marcus's heart pounded. He kept his head down and followed Nolan's instructions, walking past guards and office workers without drawing attention. He reached the 10th floor and swiped in. The hallway was sleek, modern, silent. He turned the corner and saw the glass door to Varelli's private suite. "I'm here," Marcus whispered. "There's a code lock." "Check under the keypad," Nolan said. Some old-school agents still use physical backups. Marcus reached underneath and found a tiny sticker, 5 numbers. He keyed them in. The door clicked. He stepped inside. Varelli's office was spotless. Dark wood, thick carpets, a wall of screens on one side, bookshelves on the other. A single laptop sat on the desk, closed. "Plug in the device," Nolan instructed. Marcus pulled out a USB stick from his jacket and inserted it into the laptop's port. The screen lit up. Files began transferring remotely to the federal system Nolan had prepped earlier. "I'm in," Marcus whispered, then footsteps. "Someone's coming," he hissed. "Pull out and walk away," Nolan said. "Leave the device." But it was too late. The door opened. Malcolm Varelli stood there, expression flat, a coffee in one hand. "Well," he said, stepping inside, "you're not supposed to be in here." Marcus backed up. I got lost." Varelli's eyes drifted to the USB stick still in the laptop. Then he smiled. "That's not lost," he said. Marcus bolted. Varelli dropped the coffee and lunged. Marcus barely made it past the door as Varelli tackled him. They crashed into the hallway wall. "Abort mission," Nolan shouted. "He's compromised." Jenna stood up in the van. "We have to go in." "No, not yet." On screen, they watched security swarm the hallway. Varelli stood over Marcus, brushing off his coat. "Get his ID, sweep the floor, and find where that device was sending information." Then he looked directly into the security camera and smiled. Later that night, Nolan paced the new safe house. His phone buzzed. The data they recovered was incomplete, but enough. Inside one of the files was a list of names, dozens of children, all tagged with codes, dates, and notes about their status. Amber was on the list. So were 10 other kids marked as active assets. Jenna stood nearby, reading over his shoulder. "You think they're still out there?" "I do," Nolan said, "and they're not the only ones." Jenna looked toward the room where Amber was sleeping. "Then we have to find them. All of them." Nolan nodded. "We will, but not alone." He picked up the phone and dialed a number. "Director Singh," he said when the line picked up. "It's Nolan. We've uncovered an illegal program involving children. I'm requesting a federal task force. We're taking this apart piece by piece." Across town, inside his penthouse, Varelli stood in front of a window, glass of whiskey in hand. He wasn't angry, he was intrigued. "They're getting brave," he said to the woman beside him, the same one who had given orders after Amber's escape. She wore a gray suit and thin glasses. "They have names, evidence," she said. "They still don't understand what they've stepped into," Varelli replied. "But they will." He raised his glass. "To unfinished business. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more." The following week was a whirlwind. Federal agents moved quietly across the country, acting on the data Nolan had pulled from Varelli's laptop. Hidden training compounds were raided. Storage units packed with records were seized. And children, some only 8 or 9, were recovered from underground cells, small apartments, and disguised schools. It was clear now. The Fold wasn't just a rogue program. It was a network. A machine built over years, operating in silence. And still running. Inside the safe house, Jenna stared at the bulletin board Nolan had set up. Strings connected photos of kids, locations, and known agents. Amber's face was circled at the top. 10 other kids, she whispered. "And that's just the ones we know about." Nolan stood beside her. 3 have already been located. 2 were found in Oregon, 1 in Michigan. All were being prepared for something. Training, mental tests, surveillance drills. "They were raising spies," Jenna said, her voice sharp. "Kids who would never know who they really were." Nolan nodded. "It goes deeper than I ever imagined." Amber entered the room holding a folder. "I remember this name," she said, pointing to a profile. Nolan took the folder. "Alexei Rain?" "He trained me for a year," Amber said. "He was strict but calm. He taught us how to stay invisible in a crowd. How to listen without being noticed." Jenna swallowed hard. "Do you know where he might be?" Amber hesitated. "No, but he always talked about Paris. Said it was his home." Nolan made a note. "Could be a lead." Amber sat down beside the board. "You're going to find them all, right?" Jenna walked over, crouched, and took her daughter's hands. "We will. And we're never letting them do this to anyone again." That night, Nolan received a call from Director Singh. "We have a shot," Singh said. "Varelli's planning to disappear. A jet is scheduled to leave tomorrow night from a private strip outside Nevada. It's unregistered, flagged by air traffic intelligence. He's trying to slip out. You want us there?" Nolan asked. "I want you leading the operation." Nolan's eyes sharpened. "We'll be ready." The airstrip was surrounded by desert. No lights, no signs, just one runway and a single white jet parked near a hangar. Nolan's team arrived first, 4 black SUVs positioned in the shadows. Jenna was with them, seated beside Amber in the back seat of the second vehicle. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "You're exactly where you need to be," Nolan replied. "If he gets away, this continues. If we stop him now tonight, it all starts to fall." Through binoculars, Nolan spotted 3 men near the jet, all armed. One walked with a limp. "That's him," Nolan said. "Varelli." He turned to the team. "We move when I give the signal. Jenna, you and Amber stay in the truck. Do not move unless I say," she nodded. Her hand squeezed Amber's tightly. The radio buzzed. "All units in position." "Go." In a flash, the quiet night exploded. 2 trucks moved in from the south, blocking the runway. Nolan and his team charged forward from the west, weapons raised. Federal agents, down on the ground. Gunfire erupted. 2 of Varelli's men dropped instantly. The third opened fire, but was hit in the shoulder and spun backward into the sand. Varelli ran. He didn't shout, didn't panic. He just turned and sprinted toward the hangar. Nolan chased after him, breath pounding, boots crunching over gravel. "Malcolm Varelli," he shouted. "Stop now!" Varelli didn't. Nolan fired. The bullet struck the ground near his feet. Varelli stumbled but made it to the hangar and slammed the door shut behind him. Nolan ran up and kicked it open. Inside, it was dark. Echoes bounced off the steel walls. Nolan moved slowly, gun up, eyes scanning. "Malcolm," he called. "It's over. You're done." A voice echoed from the back of the hangar. "You think this stops with me?" "I think it starts with you," Nolan replied. Suddenly, Varelli stepped out from behind a pillar, hands up. He was calm. Too calm. "You're proud of what you did?" Nolan asked. "I did what others were too weak to do," Varelli said. "I created something efficient. Clean, powerful." "You kidnapped children," Nolan said. "You destroyed families." "No," Varelli said. "I gave them purpose." Nolan lowered his weapon slightly. "You're going away for a long time." Varelli's smile returned. "Unless I disappear first." In one sudden move, he pulled something from his pocket and threw it, metal, small, blinking. "Grenade!" Nolan shouted, diving behind cover. The explosion shook the hangar. When Nolan got to his feet, smoke filled the room. But Varelli was gone. Back outside, the jet's engine roared to life. "He's on the move!" someone shouted. Jenna threw open the truck door. "Stay here," she told Amber. "Don't move." She ran toward Nolan, who was already climbing into the nearest SUV. "Get in," he shouted. They sped after the jet as it began taxiing down the runway. "He's going to take off," Jenna shouted. Nolan grabbed the radio. "Disable that jet." "Now!" From the far end of the strip, a black truck moved fast and swerved onto the runway, directly into the path of the jet. The pilot veered hard. The plane's wing clipped the ground, twisted, and spun in the sand. It screeched to a stop just before the fence. Agents surrounded it. Nolan pulled up, gun drawn, and kicked the door open. Inside, Malcolm Varelli sat in the back seat of the plane, dazed but alive. "You should have stayed hidden," Nolan said. Varelli looked up slowly. "This doesn't end here." "No," Jenna said from behind Nolan. "It ends with a yearbook." Varelli blinked, confused. But she didn't explain. He was dragged off the jet in cuffs. The operation was over, for now. Hours later, back at the federal safe house, Amber sat at the table flipping through one of the folders Nolan had given her. "Do you think they'll stop now?" she asked. Nolan stood by the window watching the sunrise. "No, but they'll scatter. Without Varelli, they're leaderless. That gives us time." Jenna joined Amber at the table and placed a book in front of her. It was a school yearbook from a middle school in Illinois, one that had just arrived by mail. Amber tilted her head. "What's this?" Jenna looked at Nolan, then opened the book. On the page marked 8th grade Miss Tolson's class, her finger landed on a familiar face. One Jenna hadn't seen in nearly a decade. Her eyes froze, her breath caught. It was Amber, a girl with the same eyes. Same smile, different name, different town. 9 years after she vanished. Someone else had used her image. Jenna whispered, "What the hell is this?" Nolan leaned in slowly. "I don't know. But that's not the only face." He turned the page again. And Jenna's whole world turned upside down. Jenna stared at the yearbook page like her brain had short-circuited. There was Amber, her exact face, smiling in a group photo taken just 3 months ago. But this wasn't a photo from their city, or even their state. This was from a school hundreds of miles away, in Illinois. The girl's name Emily Green, age 13. Same age Amber would be now if she hadn't vanished. Amber sat beside her mom, confused. "That's me." But it wasn't. Amber had never been to that school. Never even visited Illinois. Jenna turned the next page. And her breath caught in her throat. Another face, different name. Different town. Another child, same features. Same bone structure, same eyes. There were 3 of them in the yearbook. 3 girls, all with Amber's face. Nolan leaned closer. His face was tight. They cloned her identity. Jenna looked up sharply. "You mean lookalikes?" "No, digital clones, replicated faces. They didn't just train one Amber. They copied her identity and gave it to others. Maybe as cover. Maybe for something worse." Amber's voice was quiet. "I'm not the only one," Nolan nodded slowly. "You're the original. But you weren't the only one in the system." 2 hours later, they sat in a briefing room at the safe house. Photos of Emily Green were spread across the table. and another girl, Alyssa Finch, from a school in Ohio. Each had perfect school records. Each had no documented birth history before age 5. Each had been placed with a quiet, unknown guardian. Jenna folded her arms, jaw clenched. They planted them. These girls were created for something. Nolan ran his hand through his hair. It was part of the bigger plan. Varelli didn't just build spies. He built backups. Insurance. If one asset failed, another would step in. And nobody noticed? Jenna asked. They used stolen data, falsified adoption papers, remote schools, fake guardians. These girls lived normal lives while being monitored. Amber swallowed hard. Can we find them? Nolan looked up. We already did. 2 vans pulled up outside a quiet neighborhood in southern Illinois. It looked like any other suburban street, lawns mowed, mailboxes lined up, kids on bicycles. Jenna, Nolan, and 2 agents stepped out. Inside the house at the end of the street was Emily Green. Nolan motioned to the door. No one goes in heavy. She's just a child, Jenna nodded. They walked up the porch steps and rang the bell. A middle-aged woman opened the door, thin, tired-looking, with sharp eyes. Can I help you? Jenna took a calming breath. We need to speak with Emily. The woman hesitated. She's not in trouble, is she? No, Nolan said. We just need to talk to her. After a pause, the woman stepped aside. Inside, the house was neat, too neat. Like a staged setting, not a home. Emily came into the room slowly. Jenna's heart dropped again. She looked exactly like Amber. Same height, same eyes, same face. But her expression was blank, controlled. Hi, Emily, Jenna said gently. My name is Jenna. This is Amber. Do you know her? Emily's eyes flicked to Amber. She hesitated. Then, like a programmed response, no. Should I? Amber stepped forward. I think we were raised the same way. Emily didn't react. She just stared. Nolan leaned in. Emily, who taught you to speak French? She blinked. Mrs. Winlow, 3rd grade. And to shoot a rifle. The air shifted. Emily's face changed slightly, almost like a mask slipping. Then she whispered, I'm not allowed to talk about that. Jenna turned to the woman who had answered the door. You're not her real guardian, are you? The woman didn't answer. Nolan stepped closer. We know who you are. You're part of the network. You were placed here to monitor and shape her. But it's over now. The woman suddenly lunged toward the hallway. Nolan moved faster. He tackled her to the floor just as she reached for something in the drawer. A gun. Gun secured, one agent shouted. Jenna turned to Emily, who hadn't moved. She knelt in front of her. You're not in danger anymore, she said softly. You don't have to be someone else. For a moment, the girl's expression softened. Tears welled in her eyes. Amber stepped beside Jenna and held Emily's hand. For the first time, she saw her as more than a copy. She saw her as a victim, just like herself. Over the next 3 days, 2 more girls were found, one in Ohio, the other in Georgia. All had different names but carried the same foundation. Trained from youth, placed in cover homes, unaware of the world beyond what they'd been told. All of them were just like Amber. By the end of the week, the Fold's secret breeding and training program was fully exposed. Dozens of officials were arrested. More safe houses were raided. The press got wind of the truth, but the federal government kept the real details classified. To the world, it was framed as a dismantled child trafficking ring. But those who lived it knew the real story. They'd built children to become weapons. And for a time, it had almost worked. 1 month later, Jenna stood in her apartment in Denver, finally back in her own home. Amber was in her room, surrounded by real school books, not assignments designed to shape her into a shadow. Jenna held the yearbook in her hands, flipping slowly through it again. She stopped at the photo of Emily Green. Amber walked in and stood beside her. You still thinking about her? Jenna smiled softly. I think about all of them. You were gone for 9 years. And somehow, they made the world believe you didn't even exist. Amber nodded. But you never stopped looking. No, Jenna whispered. Not for a second. Amber leaned into her mother. What now? We help the others, Jenna said. We rebuild. We give you all real lives. A knock came at the door. It was Nolan. He held up a small folder. There's one more thing. Jenna opened it. Inside was a sealed document. Declassified, she asked. Nolan nodded. You have full clearance now. This file, it's everything. Every location. Every name. It's over. Jenna looked up at him. You sure? He gave a tired smile. I'm sure. Amber walked to the window and looked outside. The sun was rising. For the first time, it felt real. She turned to her mom. Can I go to a real school now? Jenna smiled. Yes, you can be a kid again. Amber didn't answer right away. Then she said, Good, because I don't want to be a ghost anymore. And in that quiet moment, she wasn't. She was home. If you like this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also, and other to strengthen our community. Let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time you are currently watching this video.